You have fallen asleep roughly 10,000 times in your life. You remember none of them. Not the moment it happened, not the last thought before it, not what it actually felt like to go under, not once in your entire life. The assumption is that if you just tried harder, you'd catch it, stay alert, focus. Surely you'd feel the exact second it happens. You wouldn't. Sleep onset isn't a moment. It doesn't have a timestamp you can pin. It's not a switch that flips. It's more like a signal that quietly stops transmitting. And the part of your brain responsible for noticing things, that's the first part to go offline. Trying harder doesn't help. It makes it worse. The attention you're using to watch for sleep is exactly what sleep needs to switch off before it can take you. So every night you go under, and every morning you have no idea when. There's a name for what happens in between. Scientists call it hypnagogia, the transitional state between waking and sleep. You've never heard of it, but you've been there. It's not a degraded version of wakefulness. It's a third mode of consciousness, different rules, different imagery. Sometimes a falling sensation hits from nowhere. Sometimes you hear your name called. Sometimes you're thinking a perfectly coherent thought, and then the thought becomes something else entirely, and you don't notice the seam. The brain isn't switching off, it's negotiating. Different regions go dark in sequence, the thalamus before the cortex, the front before the back. Which is why you can be watching strange imagery drift across your vision, while still feeling, somehow, awake. Part of you already isn't. The obvious explanation, you can't notice falling asleep because you're too tired to notice anything. That sounds right, except it doesn't explain the insomniacs. People with paradoxical insomnia aren't drowsy, they're hyper-alert, anxious, over-aroused, monitoring every sensation. They lie still, convinced they haven't slept a minute, sometimes for hours. They report the ceiling, the sounds, the thoughts running on a loop. The EEG tells a different story. They were asleep. Often for most of the night. Their brain was producing the slow waves of genuine sleep. They just had no idea. So it's not fatigue. Fatigue is the decoy. The mechanism is something structural, something that happens to every brain, alert or exhausted, the moment it crosses the line. Consciousness can only report on states it's present for. The moment awareness disappears, there's no reporter left, no one to log the event. The observer is the thing disappearing, and it can't file a report on its own exit. This isn't a flaw in how your brain handles sleep. It's a property of what consciousness is. A system that monitors its own states cannot monitor the absence of itself. The gap is invisible by definition. In one study, subjects were shown stimuli in the 4-minute window just before they fell asleep, shown images, heard words, were exposed to information their brains processed in real time. After 30 seconds of sleep, they could recall most of it. After 10 minutes, profound amnesia. The window had closed, the material was gone. The memory gate doesn't close when you fall asleep. It closes a few minutes later, which means your last few minutes of feeling awake, reading, thinking, half watching something, may already be unrecorded, already gone. Then there are the amnesia patients. People with severe memory impairment who couldn't form new, long-term memories played Tetris. They couldn't recall having done it, couldn't recall the lab, the session, any of it. But when they entered hypnagogia that night, they reported seeing Tetris blocks falling. The brain had processed the experience. It had filed something. It just hadn't given the conscious mind access to any of it. You can have an experience with zero memory of having had it. We treat sleep as a daily reset, the body switching off so it can switch back on. Consciousness isn't a continuous feed. It has gaps it can't detect, gaps where things happen and no record gets kept. It papers over all of it every morning. You wake up and the story feels unbroken. It doesn't feel like anything was missing. That's the point. The gaps are invisible from the inside. It's not even only sleep. A runner in the last mile stops noticing their body without deciding to. A musician mid-performance loses track of their hands. A programmer surfaces from 3 hours of work with no memory of the time passing. The mind switches off its own observer constantly. Sleep is just the most dramatic version. The unsettling part, you don't just fail to remember falling asleep. You fail to remember the window before it. The last thought you think you had tonight probably isn't the last thought you had. Something came after it, you processed it, you just weren't there to catch it. And if the mind papers over a gap that large every single night without noticing, what else is it missing while it's convinced it's watching?